Well, tell us about the squirrels you have here. For example, in that giant cage behind you, are they adult squirrels in there?
Those are adults. They're getting ready to be released. We had to winter them because it was cold. So in the next month or so, they'll be gone.
Now, where did they get released? In specific places or not?
A lot of times when we do a intake sheet, the people place at the bottom if they want the squirrels back on their property, we can release them back on their property. If not, we have a couple locations that we release them at.
My friend here and I are going to tell you all about squirrels on another edition of Out and About with Roger Martin.
We are a licensed rescue. A lot of times people have their trees trimmed at the wrong time of year, and so the nest gets knocked out of the tree, and so we end up with babies. Also, mom sometimes gets eaten or squashed, and we end up with them.
So this is like an intermediary situation. They come here, and do you rehab them somehow?
We raise them from babies, and then once they're raised, they're released.
You've heard of a horse whisperer and a dog whisperer, but the Santa Clarita Valley has its very own squirrel whisperer. Located within the home of a very dedicated couple is Squirrel Whisperer Rehabilitation, a nonprofit organization that has spent decades rescuing, rehabilitating, and releasing back into the wild hundreds of these adorable creatures.
Well, actually, we started rescuing around 27 years ago, and we worked as a satellite for another licensed rehabber, which you're allowed to do. And she's in Thousand Oaks, and we're out here, and we were the only ones that we were aware of that were legal. About 4 years ago, Bill decided he wanted to become his own license. And he started the paperwork, everything was fine, and then COVID hit. And that pretty well put the stop to everything until last summer. And we started the process again, and we had our inspection in November. They came out, interviewed us for about an hour, checked out our facilities. We were 100% good to go, including the sizes of the cage, because they want to know what kind of access and egress they have, the sizes, how tall, how everything, how many people might be around them. And that's why we have shades on the side, because they want minimal contact with any public other than us. With the squirrels or any of our animals that we might take in. So that's why the shades are up. So when we have our groups, we have the shades down, and supposedly the squirrels aren't going to be seeing us and become imprinted.
The furry inhabitants of Squirrel Whisperer Rehabilitation aren't lacking for new friends, since there is a constant influx of new residents. On the day we visited, a new baby squirrel was dropped off by a concerned neighbor, and Bill and Heidi were eager to assist.
Come. What you got? A little squirrel. Yeah. Aw.
Left unprotected, baby squirrels are vulnerable to predators or other dangers like hypothermia and starvation.
People call and tell them they got squirrels, then they bring them to us. We take them in, weigh them. The people who bring them has to fill out a intake sheet for Fish and Wildlife, and then we weigh them. For a while, they start gaining weight, and then check them out. We check them out for hurt or for wounds or anything broken or stuff like that, and then usually we stuck them in with somebody else. They like to be in with other squirrels when they're babies. They don't like to be by themselves. They like to snuggle.
Okay, I'm in favor of that. Tell me about the one that came in today. The lady had to fill out the form and everything?
Right. Had to fill out the form. That way, when Fish and Wildlife at the end of the year, we have a form that we fill out, how many squirrels we took in, how many that died. Sometimes we don't save them all, and hand that information over to Fish and Wildlife.
We noticed when we took a shot of the little guy today that his eyes were closed, but we turned our back and all of a sudden they're open.
Yeah, he was probably on the verge of that because about 5 weeks their eyes started opening, so he was probably just right at that moment.
Now, I don't think you can have these as pets, is that right?
No, you can't. Not in California anyway. They're protected by California Fish and Wildlife. You have to be permitted to have them in your possession. They don't make good pets because once they hit maturity, they become independent and ornery. You can get chewed on quite a bit.
How many teeth do they have?
They have 22 teeth. They have the 4 incisors in front, which they nibble with, and then they got molars, which they chew with. The only thing we have to worry about is a lot of times we get scratched a lot because feeding the babies, they always wiggle and their nails are very sharp. And so you end up with scratches all over your hands, and then sometimes they'll climb around and get on you and scratch.
It's a scratch of love, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I hope so. You never know.
For the newest arrival's lunchtime meal, Bill prepares a special milk solution which is essential to the squirrel's recovery. The solution is warmed in the microwave and then slowly administered to the squirrel using a 1 cc syringe. How many squirrels do you have right now?
There's 5 in the big cage. We have 2 other adults. We have an opossum. And then what do we have, 18 babies? 23 babies? I lost count.
That's a lot of diapers to change.
Yeah, it's a lot of feeding because right now some of them are eating anywhere from 10 to 14 cc's of milk at a time. So we have to sit there and feed 1 cc at a time, not unless they're bigger when we can use a bigger syringe. But most of the time it takes us an hour and a half just to feed everybody.
When they're real little, it's about every 2 hours when they're first born.
Is there any of this getting up at 3 a.m.?
No. If they can't take it from about 10 o'clock at night until about 9 in the morning, too bad. They're just going to have to figure it out.
While Bill administers lunch to the newest arrival, we decide to check out some of the adult squirrels who are residing in the facility's largest habitat. About a half dozen make their home here, whether it's squirreling away inside one of 3 wooden houses or clinging to the walls and the ceiling.
They scrounge for everything. They're one of the biggest seed spreaders there is, because what they do is they pick up seeds and stuff and eat them and then pass them through their body. They also take and pick up food and they'll go bury it. And a lot of times they forget where they bury it. So a lot of the shrubbery that we have is because of squirrels.
Well, they're earning their keep here, aren't
Yes,
they?
yeah.
A lot of them come out on my balcony in the morning. We feed them peanuts, but I hear that's not the preferred food, is it?
It's not really good for them because they need the calcium and vitamin D, and peanuts are not really that great for them. But they love it. They'll love them. They'll eat them like popcorn. But yeah.
Yeah, I know what that's like. Tell me about the squirrels who are running around this cage, and why are they doing that? Is it just a natural thing for them to do, or do they have to get out to attend to some business?
They forage. They're always out looking for food. That's their main thing. They go out and look for food. Right now they're in captivity, and so their food's brought to them. So right now they're just running around.
But when they're released, they'll know what to do immediately.
Oh, yeah. They'll know. Yeah. Nature kicks in and they'll find their food.
They certainly don't need to find their food here, not as long as Heidi prepares healthy meals that are full of nutrients.
First off, as soon as they start opening their eyes and they get a little bit more mature, we give them what we call, it's called rodent block, and it's very high calcium and it's pretty well balanced. And it gives them, they start chewing on that. The adults get the rodent block, they get every vegetable in the world that we can find that they normally could maybe find out in the wild. I mean, like you were talking about peanuts, well, they grow underground. Now, the squirrels might eat the tops of the peanut plant, the greens, but they wouldn't dig for the peanuts. So that is not a natural food for them. But other nuts on trees, fruits on trees, your garden, they'll decimate your garden very happily. You know, that's why we have screens over our little herbs and stuff. But right now, I'm feeding them apples, oranges, blueberries. They love blueberries and they're really good for them. Sweet potato, which is not a natural food, but it's also very high calcium and high vitamin C, and those vitamins are very important. They get carrots, another semi-important vegetable. And then as far as greens, they get collards, mustard, kale. Kale is really rich for them and good for them. And then mixed salad, greens. So they get a really nice buffet every day.
Well, I must say they eat better than I do.
And most of us, they eat better than most of us do. Nice and fresh and clean, and various greens.
After the meals are prepared, the bowls are delivered to the multitude of cages which house the squirrels based upon their age and size.
When they're small, we can put them into smaller cages, and that way we can group them. And then once they've gotten to a certain point, old enough to be weathered, we take them out to the big cage, and they spend a couple weeks, maybe a month in the big cage to get acclimated to the outside. And once they're acclimated, then the box gets closed up and they get released.
How do you release them? Slowly or quickly, or you just dump them by the roadside or in a forest, or what?
Once they're in the cage for a while, then they get the boxes that are in the cage. The balcony folds up and the lid holds the balcony closed. Then I take the box with the squirrels in it, take it out to where it's going to be released, hang the box in a tree, and then open it up, and then they have a place to sleep until they get used to their surroundings.
Is that one squirrel at a time or a group?
It's usually a group. It's usually a group. There's going to be 5, maybe not in one box, but sometimes, more than one.
Now, if somebody sees a squirrel distressed or having a problem, what should they do?
A lot of times people will find babies on the ground, and what they do is they should take and keep them on the ground and see if Mama will come back and get them. If Mama doesn't come back and get them, bring them in, keep them warm. There's a big network of rehabbers statewide. It's a database that they can call or go on to and put in their zip code, and what that does, it gives them rehabbers in their area.
As Bill tries to coax one of the adult squirrels out of the wooden house, it's easy to see how people can fall in love with them. But the most important lesson we walk away with is that squirrels are wild animals and should be treated as such.
They are not pets. They never are intended to be pets. They can turn on you in a dime. When they hit about 7 or 8 months old, the hormones kick in and they're ready to go.
What's it been like for you all these years in handling squirrels and having this really important responsibility?
Well, it's actually been kind of fun. It's been very interesting. We learned a lot. We've done a lot of research and reading. We belong to squirrel-oriented groups like on Facebook and actually just on the internet.
For information on what you should do if you ever encounter an abandoned or injured squirrel, contact Squirrel Whisperer Rehabilitation, located in the Santa Clarita Valley. When we return, we'll get all fired up about pottery and other items made from clay. Stay with us as we watch artists create exquisite works of beauty when Out and About continues.